Projekt 1065, Chapter 101. An Englishman, a Scotsman, and an Irishman. That should be the last of them, then, Chief Technician Ross of the Royal Air Force said in his Scottish brogue. He shuffled the papers into a single stack and put his pencil and eraser on top of them. The pencil was blue and had Venus Blue Band super thin, 3561, number 2, printed on it in white. The eraser said W.H. Smith. I assume it once said W.H. Smith, but the second H had worn off. You've an absolutely incredible memory for detail, said Agent Faulkner. He was in the SOE, Special Operations Executive, Britain's secret war intelligence organization, and a ramrod English aristocrat to the core. He was probably Lord something or other outside the war and had gone to university at Oxford or Cambridge, or both. I doubt even I could have reconstructed those plans from memory after all this time, he said. After our happy reunion, my parents and I had flown under the cover of night from Bern to London, where we were now. While my parents had spent the last 3 days being debriefed by the SOE and receiving their new orders from Dublin, I had worked with Chief Technician Ross to rebuild the plans for Projekt 1065 from memory, exactly the same way Simon and I had in that little secret room at the Irish Embassy. It hadn't been easy, but I'd already done it once in Berlin. Why couldn't I do it again here? Now, if the Nazis did build their jet-power Flugzeug, fly thing, the German word for airplane, the Allies would have one to match them. Have you ever heard the one about the Englishman, the Irishman, and the Scotsman who sold their brains as transplants? I asked Agent Faulkner. The British intelligence officer looked a little taken aback. He glanced at the Scottish engineer, who just shook his head and smiled. I'm afraid I haven't, said Agent Faulkner. Well, it turns out the Irishman's and the Scotsman's brains only sold for £100, but the Englishman's sold for £5,000. It just goes to prove, said the Englishman, that Englishmen are much cleverer than Irishmen or Scotsmen. No, it doesn't, said the Irishman. It just means the Englishman's brain has never been used. Right, Agent Faulkner said, not quite sure what to do with that. Chief Technician Ross tried to hide a smile. Agent Faulkner stood. I think we're about finished here, Chief Technician. The Scotsman gave me an easy salute and collected the papers. Cheers, lad. I joked, but the whole reason I've been able to remember the plans was down to Simon, my English friend. He was the one who'd helped me hone my memory, the one who'd played Kim's game with me night after night. He was the reason, too, that I've been able to save Professor Goldsmith from Fritz. Fritz. I thought of him again, standing over me, that bloody Hitler Youth dagger in his hands, ready to die for Germany. He had, in the end. Like the Hitler Youth's motto, he'd lived faithfully and fought bravely. But he hadn't died laughing. I understand you and your family are off to Washington, D.C. now, Agent Faulkner said when Ross was gone. I nodded. We are going to America. It's a new posting for my father, I said. He reckons it'll be safer there in Berlin than in Berlin, and Ma's going to help the Yanks with their new intelligence service. I paused, then asked, what about Professor Goldsmith? Is he back in the States working on the atomic bomb? Agent Faulkner cleared his throat. I really couldn't say. Of course not. Loose lips, sink ships, and all that. So when do I get to meet Mr. Churchill? I asked. Agent Faulkner looked bewildered. Meet Mr. Churchill? You know, to get my medal. Get my picture and all the papers. Faulkner looked uncomfortable. You and your family may yet get a commendation from His Majesty's government, Agent Faulkner said. But it's not for me to say. But, Michael, you do understand that you can't say a word about any of this. Ever. To anyone. I frowned. What? What do you mean I can't tell anyone? Agent Faulkner sat back down across from me. Michael, it's imperative that you tell no one about what you and your parents have done. Not one bit of it. If you go telling your story, it will be obvious that we've had Irish agents working under Hitler's nose the whole war. That we still do have Irish agents in the field. What's wrong with that? I asked. People should know. Michael, it's vital that we maintain the illusion of Ireland's neutrality. It may yet be valuable to us. I'm afraid everything you've seen or heard, everything you and your parents have done for the war effort, falls under the Official Secrets Act. You're forbidden from telling anyone what happened, under penalty of imprisonment. I couldn't believe it. My mother and father had been sending valuable intelligence to the Allies for years. I just risked my life, and theirs, and sacrificed Simon's life to get the plans for Projekt 1065, to save Professor Goldsmith, and now we couldn't tell anybody about it? It's not fair, I told Faulkner. Welcome to the world of international espionage, Agent Faulkner said, and he got up to leave. He stopped and gave me a sympathetic look. I'm afraid you'll just have to sleep well in the knowledge that you and your family have done your part to win the war. I huffed. It wasn't enough. I wanted the world to know what I'd done, what Ma and Da had done. But then I remembered riding on the train through Switzerland with Goldsmith, feeling bitter about Ireland's neutrality in the war. The truth was, Ireland wasn't sitting on the sidelines. We had done something. We were just fighting in a different way. Even though nobody would ever know what I'd done, what my Ma and Da had done, what Ireland had done, we'd stood up to Hitler and the Nazis with the rest of the Allies. We'd fought for freedom, too.